Worcester Bosch Greenstar 4000 boiler installation and full review. My name is Hart, and in today's video I'm going to install this Worcester Bosch Greenstar 4000 on the wall. I'm going to go through it, I'm going to go through what I like about it, what I don't like about it on the way for installing it, and then also I'm going to get it on the wall, I'm going to make it work, and then we'll go through some displays up front, we'll look inside the boiler, and I'm going to do a full review on this video. If you don't want to see this first bit now and we're putting it on the wall, just skip into the video maybe about 5 minutes in, and then you'll be able to watch from the review of the boiler being on the wall. So first of all, I'd like to thank Heatable. Heatable have been really supportive to this channel, and they've sent this boiler out for us so that we can install this and do this review today. So if you are looking for a new boiler, please check out their channel, and they offer a fixed price for a boiler installation. Without further ado, let's get into this video. So this is the first Worcester Bosch boiler that I've installed in a lot of years. So yesterday I spent about between 4 and 6 hours just going through all the installation instructions, and there was something that I wasn't sure about, so I actually phoned Worcester Bosch just to double check. So it's very important that you make sure that you know what you're doing before you start. My advice would be, if you can, go on the manufacturer's training courses, and then when you start installing them boilers, you'll be installing them right from the start. That's my opinion. So I've got the template here. I'm going to put the template on the wall. One thing to point out with this, if I was going to do this in a customer's house, I would mark this template up, and then I would core the hole out for the flue first before I put the jig on, and before I do any of the boiler part of it. You won't want to get all that muck in your new boiler, you know, bits of rubble inside flue and all that. I've seen that happen loads of times. So I'm going to put this jig onto the wall. One thing with this as well, with this Worcester Bosch Greenstar 4000, the pipes can go up the back there. So, but we'll have a look at that later once we've got the jig on the wall. So what I'll do now, I'll mark this up and we'll get the jig onto the wall. So I've got the template on the wall now, and as you can see on here, you've got your flue, picture of your flue on there. So you can mark the centre for your flue, and then you can core your flue out, remembering you need a slight angle on there. So you'd have to refer to installation instructions, and I think we said it was 52mm per metre. So depending on the thickness of your wall, you'd have to guess, or you'd have to work that out, not guess, work it out. Also, on here you've got all your fixings. So before you've got your boiler or your jig or out, you can drill all your all the fixings. There's a lot of fixings as well. So if you've got a bad wall behind, you'll be able to get you've got a better chance, I should say, of getting a good fixing. I think that's really good, to be honest, that. And then if we look down here, we can see on here, you've got all your valves, and there's also a centre line on there. So again, you can draw on wall, get a pencil, mark on wall, mark for your clips. So you can make all the mess before you even put boiler on wall. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to drill some fixings. I'm going to move that jig there. I'm going to put that jig onto here. I'm also going to put some clips on wall, and I'm going to put some pipes down and do a bit of soldering as well today, because I've run out of press fittings, so I'll have to use some soldered. So I'm just ready to take this template off now, but I just thought I'd show you before I did. The screws, I've put some of the screws in. Some of these screws are like that so that you can just click them on, and then there's some that are just fixed so that once you screw them in, obviously the jig won't come back off. And I've also put the brackets on below, so I can tidy up, can take all this off here now, and then we can get it all piped up. So that's it now, that's the jig on the wall, and I've just got to pipe it up now. The PRV is on the front on this boiler, but the connection is here. So that's got like this fancy clip here. So what you need to do, you need to pipe this up first, and then you take this red bit off, and then you'll click your boiler onto it. One thing I like about this boiler and the previous boilers that we used to install years ago is the tails on the back, they're not fixed. So you can put whatever length in you want. So for Talon clips, so I would normally use Talon clips. They'll go straight in. You cut that to whatever the distance is, and I can't remember off the top of my head. We'll find out when we come to pipe it up. But say for instance you've got a pipe, one of them's going to go this way. You can just cut this one a little bit shorter, if that makes sense, and then just take it straight over. So it just makes it a little bit easier, especially if you go into a job where all pipe work's all over. With this, you can cut it and adapt it how you want. When you've got tails on a boiler, which are fixed tails, and you have to connect onto them, sometimes it can be more difficult. So I like that about this. But as I say, we'll pipe this up now. So I've started to put the pipes on there now, and I'm just going to measure the distance from where the elbow is going to be to the front of the boiler, so that I can cut all the little bits for the pipe work. One thing just to point out on this PRV here, it's just a little bit too short to go straight in. Now, there may be a reason that they've done that, and if you're an installer and you install these boilers, please put a comment below and let me know. It's not the end of the world. I can put an offset on this pipe, or I could put a spacer on it, but yeah, it's not. It would be better if it only had to be 15mm longer, and it could have gone straight into that. I suppose sometimes you'd be going straight through back, so it might not be a big issue, and maybe a lot of time people won't be putting a clip on blow off because it'd be too short. But that's just my little criticism with that. Let me know below if you think it's an issue or not. Obviously for a customer's not really going to be bothered. For an installer, anything that can make your life easier and quicker to install the boiler, the better, because then you can spend more time on flushing the system and setting it up and all that type of stuff. But as I say, put a comment below, let me know what you think to that. So I've started to solder some of these now. What I've done with the PRV, have a look there, I've just put a street elbow in and a socket, and that fits in perfect. So if anybody who's going to be installing these, if you get a street elbow and a socket, it fits perfect, and then it still fits in your clips, then all okay. So what I'll do now, I'll just finish off this soldering, and then we'll get boiler up wall. So that's the boiler on the wall. So as I've said already, this is a Worcester Bosch, and it's a Greenstar 4000, and it's a combi boiler. This is a 30 kilowatt boiler that we've got here. This boiler will not be a working boiler in this property. I've just installed it for the purposes of this video and doing this review for you. If we have a look at some things on this, we've got a central heating filter on here. So I would advise always to flush the system when you install a new boiler, and also check that with something like an AD Pro check. Personally, I would use the AD Pro check. I like that. If you've got another recommendation, please put that below and let me know what you think is the best for testing when you install a new boiler. With the AD Pro check, obviously you can send an email to the customer so you can prove that you've tested it when you installed it. The next thing, if we look on here, we haven't installed a shock arrestor on here. So again, look in the installation instructions and see if the boiler needs a shock arrestor. Now, I would advise that any boiler that's got plastic components inside, or reinforced glass, whatever they want to call it, plastic is my thing, then I would advise you would always put a mini shock arrestor on there, always. Normally, what they will say in the installation instructions is, if it's got a backflow prevention device, so a check valve, a non-return valve, or a water meter, then you need to install a mini shock arrestor or a mini expansion vessel. And if we look at the pipework below, you need to have a minimum of 600mm of copper pipe before you go to plastic. So if you're going to put speed fit pipes on or out like that, you need to have a minimum of 600mm before you do that. Also on this, we haven't got a scale reducer on here. As I say, this isn't going to be a working boiler, but we're not in an area that would need one anyway. But again, you would need to check your area and see if you need one of them on there. I'm going to finish off the pipe work at the bottom afterwards, but I'm going to clean the boiler up first. So to take the case off on this boiler, there's just 2 screws underneath, so a massive improvement to some of the other models of boilers. It's got insulation on the inside, so that's going to help with soundproofing. And then obviously inside, expansion vessel at the front, Schrader valve at the front. One thing I do really like about this boiler, it's got a big pipe on the expansion vessel. So a lot of boilers, it's actually the pipe to the expansion vessel that blocks up. So that's a real big improvement. This looks very similar to some of the older models, does the heat exchanger. It's probably a slightly different heat exchanger, but we'll look at that maybe on a different video. Gas valve forward facing, so you can get onto connections a lot easier than previous models. So if we just pull these 2 clips in here, and then what we can do, we can just connect these pipes up, and we can install the condensate trap as well. And then we'll go over this boiler we'll have a real good look at it once I've connected it all up. Just connecting PRV up. I will warn that was a little bit awkward, and it is a little bit awkward. It's not actually quite as bad as what I expected from what I've been told. But I'm just going to put all washers on here now, tighten all this up, and then we'll fill the boiler up. Yeah, we'll have a good look at it. One thing to point out on here as well, no sharp edges. Also on this, you can use this as a tray. You would need to be careful, but you can put all your washers and stuff on there. There's also some little holes in there, so you can put your screwdriver in when you're working on it. One issue you get with boilers that's got a digital display is, as an installer, when you're filling it up, obviously you've no power on yet, so you don't know what the pressure is. But Worcester have put a manual pressure gauge on here, and this is inside the boiler. So this is really, it's only for installer. So that's a good little touch, really. It's also got the drain off behind here, like we've had with previous Worcester Bosch models, which is, the drain off on these is really good. And then to get to it, you can just clip this pressure gauge just out of the way, nice and easy. And then you just better get onto that with your hose pipe, just like you could with previous models. Obviously turn that round, and what I've just learned recently is you can actually turn them and get them to come out, which I didn't actually know, and I've worked on boilers for years. So it just goes to show that every day is a school day, and we can always learn. And this is why I would always recommend that everybody goes on any training course you can and try and further your knowledge. Even if you've been doing this job a long time, personally I would say if you go on a training course, you're almost definitely going to learn something on that day. And if we look inside the boiler here, we can see we've got the plate heat exchanger, and this is so easy to take out. It's just got one screw there, and that would just come out. Obviously you'd be turning water off and all that type of stuff. But we know that a lot of boilers get installed on dirty systems, and all boilers have problems with plates, and that's nearly always, in my opinion, down to how the boiler was installed to start with. But Worcester's made it a bit easier, or quite a lot easier, to get the plate heat exchanger out. Obviously on this you'd have to take the condensate trap out, which is what I'm going to connect in now, and then we're going to get this boiler up and running, or we're going to have a look at the display on front anyway. Just before we put the power onto it, I'm just going to take these sides off and just show you. So these sides, they just slide straight forward, and then you can get all the way in to the side of the boiler. And again, we'll do that on this side as well. So then you've got quite a lot more space in there then, with both sides off. To be honest, a lot of time it might be in a cupboard, so that might not help, but you can get all the parts out on this from the front. The expansion vessel, Once it's drained down, you just undo that there. That can slide out. It's got a little screw up there. This slides out. And again, all this, you can all do this front as well. It's also got a large condensate trap on this. So it's a 500ml trap. So it's said to help with freezing. So hopefully the boilers will not freeze as much in winter. You'd still have to protect your condensate as per the installation instructions as well. Another thing to point out on this boiler, it's now got a pressure sensor, which means that if there's no water pressure in the boiler, then it will give a fault code and the boiler will not work. So that'll be something for just for you to be aware of, because you will have to top the pressure up. And leading on to the fact that this boiler, you can also get an intelligent fill for this boiler, which will mean that it actually will top itself up. So they've sort of solved one problem, made another problem, and then solved that problem as well, which is good. One really good thing with this boiler is it will modulate down to 3 kilowatts. So for me, this is really important, because some boilers, they'll only modulate down to like 6 or 7 kilowatts, which means if you do heat loss calculations for a lot of houses, you'll find they only need 7-8 kilowatts to heat the house. They might even be lower than that. So what that means is, and that's at the deepest, darkest winter at -3 outside. So what that means is that in the middle of the year, or when it's just starting to get to winter, your house might only need 3.5, 4 kilowatts to keep warm. And this will modulate down to that, which is really good. You can also range rate this boiler. There's also a plug with this that you can, I think it's called the low NOx plug, that you can change on here. And the low NOx code plug, it reduces it down to 13 kilowatts permanent, which means it'll never go above 13 kilowatts, which again is really good. There's very few houses that will need more than that for what this boiler is set for. This boiler comes in a 25 kilowatt and a 30 kilowatt for hot water. So you're never going to need, in that size of property, normally you're going to struggle to need more than 13 kilowatts. So that's an option. It's an optional extra. I think you'd have to buy that extra. One thing I like on this is that it's got an auto air vent, and it's on the top of the heat exchanger. When we go to most boilers, they're on the back of the pump. And then what can happen is your heat exchanger. So for instance, if you've got a boiler that's up in a loft, your heat exchanger is actually where all the air is. So then it can cause problems with the heat exchanger. And this is with a lot of brands. It used to be, years ago, they used to have Worcester, they used to have auto air vents on top, they used to have even filling points on top when it had an old open vent system where you could come in and fill from top. And it meant that the heat exchangers were always full and there were never no air in the heat exchanger. But obviously having that there is, I think, in my opinion, is a big improvement as well. But put a comment below, let me know if you've had any issues with heat exchangers, getting air in them, kettling, causing problems on any brand of boiler, to be honest. So yeah, auto air vent. I put the case back on the boiler now and it's showing a fault code, and it's showing a fault code as low water pressure, which is something quite unique, and it's a little bit funny with a Worcester, because I'm not used to that. We've not had that for a lot of years. So yeah, we've turned it on. So it's got the fault code on. Interestingly, it comes set at 65 degrees for the heating, which obviously the lower we have that heating temperature, the more efficient the boiler is going to be. So that's probably just to G people up a little bit to have it a little bit lower. Obviously, if you install these for customers and they're used to having radiators really hot, then you may need to turn that up. Really though, what you want to try and do is educate the customer that to have the heating on for slightly longer and have the temperature lower. Another thing with this boiler, they do come with smart controls and they just plug in underneath, which makes it quite simple to install. I think I'm going to do a full video on this front display. I'm going to do a separate video. I'll fill the system up. We'll do a separate video. I need to get a filling link as well because I didn't get one when I got the boiler. So yeah, if you've got any questions about this boiler, please put them in comments below. I will finish off installing this boiler, so we'll get it so that it'll work and get flue connected, and then we can do any videos you like, any tests you like. Please put your opinion of this boiler below. What's my opinion? If I'm honest with you, it's a lot better boiler than I could ever imagine. The case coming off is brilliant. 2 screws, front cover comes off. PRV is brilliant. Condensate trap is a little bit faffy, but that doesn't matter to a customer. Auto air vent on top, I like that. Range rateable, again, that's really good. That's an improvement. Although the CDI isn't, you've been able to do that with 20-year-old Worcesters, to be fair. Low rate, 3 kilowatts, again, brilliant, really good. What else that I can think bad? PRV, if I'm really being picky, that's a little bit faffy, but it's better that it's on front, and it's definitely better than being on the back of a boiler where it's more difficult to get to. So that can only be a plus, the PRV on it. And I think that's it. I can't think of what else. Yeah,